This is the first of 3 videos created by Clark University graduate students concerning intensity analysis. Intensity analysis is an accounting framework that analyzes transitions among categories between consecutive time points. We use this example concerning land change to illustrate the principles. The case study is a Palm Island ecosystem site in northeastern Massachusetts, USA. Here we have land cover maps at 3 time points: 1985, 1991, and 1999. Each map has 7 categories: built, agriculture, ranch, forest, water, wetland, and barren. The maps appear similar because there's only a few % changes between the consecutive time points. It is better to show maps of change during each interval. Here we have 1 map for each time interval. Gray is persistence, and any non-gray color indicates a losing category. The largest losing category is forest. For this pair of maps, the long gray color indicates the gaining category. The largest losing category is built. It is important to see the changes in the maps, and it is important to also analyze the changes quantitatively. The transition matrix is usually a first step to examine changes among categories between 2 time points. A map overlay between any 2 points in time can generate the transition matrix, where the rows show the categories at an initial time, and the columns show the same sequence of categories at a subsequent time. Entries on the diagonal indicate land persistence, and entries off the diagonal indicate land change. Off-diagonal entries show the size of the area that transitioned from the initial category to the subsequent category during the time interval. The entries in the center part of the matrix sum to 100% of the landscape. The transition matrix contains too many numbers to digest at once. Intensity analysis offers an approach to analyze those numbers in a systematic accounting system that begins with the broad concepts and then eventually dives into more subtle details. Intensity analysis has 3 levels of analysis shown at the top left of this slide: interval, category, and transition. We begin with the interval level, which examines overall change in each time interval. For the interval from 1985 to 1991, the overall change is 3.34%. For the interval from 1991 to 1999, the overall change is 4.27%. This shows the 2 results graphically. The horizontal axis is the change area in terms of % of the map. There, the size of change is smaller in the first interval than the second interval, but the duration of the first interval is 6 years and the duration of the second interval is 8 years. It will be helpful to visualize the annual change, which is the temporary intensity of change. The temporal intensity of change is the size of the change divided by the number of years of the duration of the time interval. The bars on the right side of this figure shows the annual change area for each interval. The dashed line is a uniform line, which would be the annual change if all the changes were distributed uniformly across the entire temporal extent. The lower bar extends beyond the uniform line. We call this interval fast. The upper bar stops short of the uniform line. We call this interval slow. All the other levels of intensity analysis follow the same format as in this figure, where the right side of the figure shows an uniform line and the bars shows intensities, while the left side of the figures shows the size of a change. Remember, the size are on the left and the corresponding intensities on the right. The category level digs deeper into the details of the matrix. The category level examines the size and the intensity of each category's growth, gain, and loss during each time interval. We observe that built has an obvious gain of 2.83%, and forest has an obvious loss of 2.09%. Bars with dark colors represent gains, while bars with light colors represent losses. Forest is a category with the largest losses, and agriculture is a category with the second largest loss. Intensity analysis gives insight to explain the relative sizes for these losses. For example, forest is the largest category at the initial time. So if all categories lose with the same intensity, then forest will have the largest loss. The left side of the figure does not show the intensity of any of the losses or gains. In general, intensity analysis compares the size of a change to the intensity of a change. To compute the gain intensity, we divide each category's gain by the size of the category at the subsequent time. To compute the loss intensity, we divide each category's loss by the size of the category at the initial time. This computation follows the same type of straightforward arithmetic that we used at the interval level. Now we can examine the category intensity bars. The dashed line is a uniform line, which is equal to the annual change during the interval. If all categories lose with the same intensity, then all the loss intensity bars will be at this line. Similarly, if all categories gain with the same intensity, then all the gain intensity bars will be at this line. If a bar extends to the right of the uniform line, then that loss or gain is active. If a bar stops to the left of the uniform line, then that loss or gain is dormant. We can see both forest and agriculture losses are active. And actually, agriculture is losing more intensively than forest. Forest loss is large because forest is large at the initial time, and it is losing intensively. Agriculture's loss is large in spite of its small size because agriculture is losing very intensively. We can't see these interpretations by examining only the left side of this figure. Intensity analysis gives insights to change because we can see the sizes of the change on the left side of the figure, and we can see the intensity of the changes on the right side of the figure. The third level is the transition level. It is the most detailed level. The transition examines the sizes and intensities of the transitions within the matrix. Let's examine the gain of build. When build gains, it takes from the non-build categories in the column of the transition matrix. The transition from forest to build accounts for 2.15% of the study area, which is far greater than the amount build take from any other categories. Our question now is, how can we account for build gaining more from forest than any other category? There are two potential answers to this. The first possible answer is that forest is larger than any other category at the initial time. Thus, if all transition intensities were equal, then build would take more from forest than any other category. In other words, if all transition intensities were uniform, then the sizes of the transition in the build column would be proportional to the sizes of the categories at the initial time. A second possible answer is that build is targeting forest. Intensity analysis helps answer our question. These bars show the size of the transition from each category to build. The dashed line is a uniform intensity line. The forest bar on the right stops short of the uniform line. Therefore, build actually avoid forest. The bars for the agricultural range and barren extend beyond the uniform line. Therefore, build targets those categories. This is evidence that build's gain targets agriculture and avoid forest. Therefore, size of the transition from forest to build is larger than the size of the transition from agriculture to build, because there is more forest than agriculture at the initial time. So, it is helpful to examine the intensity of transitions to see whether some transitions are large simply because the categories are large, or because the transitions are intense. We can see from here that builds gain avoid forest, but the forest bar is very close to the uniform line. The next video in this series will explain how far an intensity bar must be from the uniform line in order to make any conclusion justified. Intensity analysis can help investigators to think how to link patterns with processes. Let us consider a hypothetical scenario in which environmentalists say that builders cause deforestation because builds take more from forest than from any other category. Here it is clear that build takes more from forest than from any other category. However, builders refute this accusation. Builders claim they avoid forest and prefer to build on barren. The right side of the figure shows evidence that builders indeed avoid forest and target agriculture, ranch, and barren. Intensity analysis sheds light on the riddle by showing that the claims are not contradictory. The National Science Foundation supported this creation of intensity analysis through the Long-Term Ecological Research Network. In order to get a deeper understanding of intensity analysis, read a paper by Alderwalk and Pontius, which you can get by writing to Professor Pontius or by visiting his website. Please watch part 2 and 3 of this series in order to learn how to interpret deviations from the uniform intensity and how to run a free computer program to perform intensity analysis with your own data.